starting with, on Friday night, the Pac-12 championship game between number 5 Oregon and number 3 Washington. The Ducks, despite losing the first time around, are 9.5-point favorites. Pretty steep maybe for those that have not been keeping up with these two teams, and it carries an over-under of 66.5 points. As mentioned, this one kicks off on Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC from Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Fun fact, back-to-back conference championships and back-to-back days at Allegiant Stadium. We'll talk about the other one upcoming. I'm very excited for this matchup. It was a blockbuster the first time around, did not disappoint. In my opinion, one of the more exciting games of the whole season. Michael Penix to Rome Odunze in the closing minutes. But then Oregon comes back and misses that 43-yard field goal, and that secured the win for Washington 33-30. Now, this did open up Oregon minus 8.5, but that was bumped up, deemed not quite high enough almost immediately. The first one over Oregon seemed to kind of take it out of Washington. They're beating opponents by just an average of 6.5 points, and on that slate, that includes Arizona State, Stanford, Washington State. It was not a murderer's row, per se, of opponents that they were just skirting by. Now, I heard it in the midseason at first, and this is not my take, but it's even more relevant now that, look, this team is just 2022 TCU all over again. In fact, they actually broke 2022 TCU's record for most 10-point or fewer wins in a row with 8 of them. TCU had 7 last year, and we remember how that went going into the postseason, besides their surprise win in the college football playoff. But then you look across the way to Oregon, and that loss seemed to invigorate them. Now they're beating their schedule by an average of 22.3 points per game, which also includes Arizona State, Wazoo, Cal. Again, not the biggest murderers row, but they laid waste to some quality opponents as well. It's not a perfect one-to-one comparison by any stretch, but I do think that kind of gives a pretty strong indication of where these two teams are currently at. How are they beating these subpar opponents that are overmatched? Oregon, taking care of business, leaving absolutely no doubt. Washington, they're making the games watchable and a lot of fun. Now, to me, my biggest question is this the Heisman defining game? It really comes down to Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels, but I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't completely eliminate Michael Penix. I wrote in an article this past week about where the landscape of the Heisman Trophy is right now. The Athletic releases straw polls that I think are pretty indicative of the voters' feelings on where they're at. Michael Penix is still there. If he comes into this game and absolutely lights up Oregon and Washington has a resounding win and secures their college football playoff spot, I would be hard-pressed not to consider him, although I do kind of land with Jaden Daniels has one of the most history. You can read in the article. I won't go on about it here. We don't have time for that. But the overall worst unit in this game on every facet, to me, is the Washington rush defense. The first time around, Oregon rushed for over 200 yards on them. They'll probably continue to be able to do that. And playing at home last time definitely helped Washington. I mean, you saw it with the quick start, 2 first-quarter touchdowns. That's thanks to being at home and being comfortable. Now, do they get that same fast start again in Vegas? Not sure.
You said this game opened at Oregon minus 8.5, Brett. That's exactly what my numbers make it. I have Oregon with a 72% win expectancy, and I agree with so much of what you said there, Brett, including the fact, I know you said it's not necessarily your take, but it's been out there for a while. It is my take. I think there are a lot of similarities between this Washington team and last year's TCU team. I posted it on X a couple different times now. I feel like Washington fans get offended by it. It's not an insult. TCU played for the national championship a year ago. Only Georgia had a better season than the Horned Frogs in 2022. It was an amazing year in Fort Worth, just like it's been an amazing year in Seattle this year. But there's no getting around it. Oregon is playing like the better team between these two. And like you said, they have been since that loss in Seattle in Week 7. Oregon's been my number 1 rated offense since Week 10. They're now their defense is now playing at a season best level, number 14 nationally. The Ducks are number 3 in my power ratings overall. Only Jacksonville State and Arizona have improved their K-Ford power rating more since the preseason than Oregon. Does this team have a top 4 resume? No. I talk about that in my article for the Lions. You were talking about your Heisman article. I'm talking about it in my article over there at thelines.com too. It's really not even close as things stand right now. They have a chance to improve that resume if they're able to beat Washington, a neutral site here, but it's not top 4 resume right now. Is this a top 4 best team though? My numbers do say yes to that one. You flip that around. Oregon doesn't have the resume, but they've got the predictive analytics and the power behind them. Washington, they've got the resume, but they're lacking a little bit from the predictive sense. Washington is number 1 in my record achievement metric. There is just a 1% chance that the average top 25 team would be undefeated against Washington's schedule. What they have accomplished this year is truly remarkable, regardless of who did it. Playing that schedule and going undefeated, that's remarkable. The Huskies are number 3 in my most deserving rankings overall because it's a mixture of the record achievement and the relative scoring margin as well. So when you put those two together, you get Washington at number 3, which is exactly where the committee has them. But from a power rating standpoint, there is a reason that this spread here is more than a touchdown. It's pushing 10 points. I have Washington power rated number 13 nationally. That's a spot they've held since week 10, Brett. The offense is elite. You know this. You've talked about this. We're talking about Penix still being in the Heisman race, right? You don't have a quarterback in the Heisman race if your offense isn't elite. They've been top 5 every single week since week 2 for me, but this defense is merely top 40. And I say merely top 40. That's better than I expected coming into the year. Had a lot of questions about this defense. They've performed well. They've kind of taken a step back as we've gone here. And when you're talking about the elite of the elite, trying to make a playoff, trying to beat a number 3 power-rated team, the committee's number 5 team, you've got to be better than top 40. They can play like that in one game, yes. Will they? I'm not sure. Will they be able to slow down Bo Nix and that Ducks offense away from Husky Stadium? Because remember, that first game, it was in Washington. As you said, that played a big role. I'm just not convinced. Bottom line, I've got Oregon minus 8.5. It's a 28% chance that Washington reaches 13 wins for the first time in program history, Brett. I had to go back and double check that. We do play more games now, with the 12-game regular season, conference championship game, potentially the playoff. But a program like Washington, some good history, some national championships, never won 13 before.
There's been some talk about this game maybe even being a blowout. And even the market movement kind of suggests it's not supposed to be the closest game on our slate this weekend. But I'm not convinced it's really a blowout. If this number does hit double digits, I will be considering Washington in that spot, especially with the high scoring expected here. We have a total into the mid to upper 60s. That's where I would probably be taking the points with Washington if they do reach 10. But it was a term that was thrown out a lot. Solid Verbal, terrific college football podcast. They were all over this phrase last year for TCU in luck runs out. And I think that definitely applies here. If you are playing too close of games in which your post-game win expectancy is near 50%, or it's a one-score game, which can indicate a toss-up, you're going to be on the losing end of that eventually, just probabilistically. And I know that's how you think and how your numbers operate. So luck runs out is something I'm potentially looking for this weekend here. I do actually lean under their 28.5 team total. Don't love that, but the explosive plays just have not been there for a large part of the end of the season. When they were there, it was against USC, who, that was the last game for Alice Grinch and a defense that just opted not to stop anybody. But other than that, you look at their other games, and they're against Washington State, not exactly the stoutest defense out there. They just lack explosive play right now, which is bizarre for the talent on this offense. I know that the saying that Oregon gets another look at Washington kind of goes both ways, right? Washington gets another look at Oregon. They've seen each other already. But I actually think getting the team again benefits the losing team in a close game. If you lost that close game, far more than the team that won. And if you look at it, 59% post-game win expectancy for Washington last time. So I think Oregon has a leg up here. I agree with you in that they are playing like the better team right now. And they've got a chance to give Bo Nix some serious hardware here other than just a Pac-12 championship if they win and win convincingly on offense. So that's kind of where I stand. If it hits 10, I'll probably play a little bit back on Washington. I like under team total 28.5 currently. It's going to be a great game either way.